Hello everyone, my name is Thomas Wooden Railway and I am here to give you a tour of my brand new Thomas Wooden Railway layout. This layout is going to be used in Season 17 of my Thomas Wooden Railway series, which will be starting up very soon, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, I want to give you guys a tour and an overview of this layout like I usually do so that you can see where everything is. And of course, I'll give you guys all of the information and the fun facts and tidbits like I usually do. But anyway, let's get this layout video started. So like I said, this is a brand new layout that I have built. Unlike the previous two layouts, if you guys are familiar with my channel, the last two layouts I have built were based on a map of the island of Sodor, where I put all the destinations in order. For example, I had Knapford on the left side and Vicarstown on the right side, and tried to, put everything in order as best I could. And well, that was a lot of fun to do. I couldn't keep doing that forever. I mean, you can only build the same layout so many times. So anyway, this is a brand new layout. I kind of went back to my old school ways, or kind of back to my roots when it came to building layouts, and just decided to do something that seemed like a good idea. So I am very excited to show this layout to you all. I'm sure there are going to be some areas that you like and some areas that you don't like, but that's what makes layout building so much fun. So anyway, this is what the layout looks like from the top perspective. For the most part, we have like a standard gauge area over here, narrow gauge, and yes, the return of the Arsdale Railway or the small gauge engines over here. And let me just kind of take you through all the different areas, and I can show you guys what every little section has to offer. So let's start here at Tidmouth Sheds, where we have a bunch of our international engines at. This was the very first piece I laid down. I wanted to have Tidmouth Sheds kind of in the center here, and I wanted to have the rest of the layout just kind of surrounding it, which is what we did. So as you guys can see, Tidmouth Sheds looks somewhat the same from this perspective, but I decided to turn the turntable sideways, and so we have this huge area where all of our international engines can just kind of gather around in a bunch of sidings, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. So like I said, layout building is just a combination of things you wanted to do for a while, or you try out things that you weren't so sure about. And so I'm very happy with how this part turned out. I think this will be just kind of a great meeting area for all of the engines. But this is definitely the Tidmouth area of the layout, because we have Tidmouth Station right here, and then we also have way over there, that is Tidmouth Halt, where James is at. So definitely the Tidmouth area of the layout. Let's see, we'll go a little bit south here. It kind of moves directly into the Wellsworth area of the layout. So we have the Scrapyard here. We also have the station that's just a little bit lower, but again, brand new layout. The Scrapyard kind of has the same pieces and destinations that we are all used to, but it's just laid out a little bit differently. So there's the Wellsworth crossing. Here are elements of the Scrapyard here, where we have Whiff, Scruff, and Reg. We also have these sheds over here, which, you may want to call, the Wellsworth sheds, or the sheds where Edward and Philip stay at. But honestly, the way they're laid out here, it kind of makes more sense that these would be sheds for Whiff and Scruff, if I'm being honest, so that they could just come here when they're done working every day. But anyway, that's up to your interpretation. And then, like I said, we have Wellsworth Station right here. Edward is not there. He's just a little bit farther down the line, polling Rocky. But we have Wellsworth Station right here, and then this is also Bear with a goods train. And so we are going to move right into the Knapford area of the layout. So even though it wasn't my intention, we still have Knapford on the left side, Vicarstown on the right side. Everything in between is random and not in any order, but it still kind of worked out that way. So this is Knapford Station. Nothing too different or unusual here. The yard is actually what's most different. This is kind of the main yard that is going to be used to serve all of the engines of Sodor. I have enjoyed building these massive yards off to the side with a bunch of switches in the past, but I did want to try something new. So this is what the yard looks like. It's definitely a lot smaller, but there's still a ton of different sidings for all of the troublesome trucks and rolling stock to fit through. Mallard's line moves straight in here. This is also the line that Emily is on, and it's going to move into the Scrapyard. So I had this idea for a while of just using like a bunch of T-switches and a bunch of three-way switches just to kind of create this weird mess of a yard, I will say. But I think it looks pretty unique, and like I said, I know it's probably not going to be everybody's favorite yard design, but I think it looks pretty cool. And then we have our normal shunters, Stafford and Phillip right there. So back to Maithwaite Station, there's this V-switch here, which once again combines those middle two lines, and it loops around over some bumps, and is actually going to combine with that first line and go straight to the scrapyard. And then Spencer's line, there's a couple different ways you can go. We also have like this coal depot area that is like adjacent to the sheds here. So you could call this the Crosby Coal Depot. We have Logan and Fred and Hector with a bunch of different coal buildings, and there's coal scattered all around, as you can see. And then we also kind of have this back area here, which I will call the resting and rejuvenation area, where if there's an engine on a layover with a train, or they just need a rest, they can come over here and get a nice wash and refill with water, maybe get some coal, and then they can get back on their way. So I do like how this area of the layout turned out. It's just kind of a nice relaxation zone for all of the engines. And then, since I don't have to follow any map with this layout, I thought, well, where would you put an airport on the island of Sodor? It'd make most sense to put it next to the busiest station on the island. So this is where the airport is at this time around, and we also have Hugo here. So Spencer's line, if you decide to not go any of those two ways, you're going to come down the line here. This is the line that Edward was on, and it leads straight into Wellsworth. So now I'm going to go a bit into the layout here. One thing you guys are going to notice with this layout, there's a lot of different road sections. We got a lot of roadway, which you'll notice there with I think that's the mountain overpass with Bulgy, the toll booth. There is Gordon's Hill right here. That is Hero pulling a goods train, and the Sodor Railway repair in front of the Duke and Duchess's house. This is going to be what I would call kind of the Thomas's branch line area of the layout, or just kind of like the farmland area. But really quick, this is the back of Maithwaite Station. Here is the Mr. Jolly's Chocolate Factory, or like the Sodor Sweet Shop, whatever you want to call it. But this area was featured on my last layout. It looks a little bit different though, but we kind of have all of our regular characters and destinations, like the Chocolate Factory, this building right here. I think this is something to do with the Sodor Sweet Shop, but you know, same stuff, just looks a little bit different. And I like how it is nestled up against Gordon's Hill here. And Gordon's Hill was actually one of the last areas of the layout that I did, simply because it could have fit in a lot of different places on the layout. It really could have, but I just kind of left it for last and threw it in, and I think it looks pretty good there. So this right here, like I said, this is kind of the farmland area, or the, you know, Thomas's branch line area. You're going to notice a lot of different farm buildings. I have a couple of different landmarks from Thomas's branch line, such as Maithwaite Station here. So not only do we have the main building here, we also have the station and the platform. There is Toby's windmill, which Billy is by, and also the grain loader. Let's see, we also have Charlie over here with some milk cars. There is Terrence. And then for the very first time on one of the layouts I've ever built, I've included Farquhar sheds. Now, it's not that impressive just because it's 3 sheds up against the wall here. But in the very first couple seasons of Thomas and Friends, and then also the Railway series, this is where Thomas, Percy, and Toby stayed. So again, it's not all that impressive, but I did want to show it off because it is a brand new area that I've never featured before. One other thing you've probably noticed with this layout is that there's a lot of excess carpet kind of like at the edge of the layouts. You're probably like, why is that? Well, I wanted to give myself space so that when it comes to filming my episodes, I have enough space to move around and to get the best camera angles, versus having to go into the majority of the layout like you see up above there and tear stuff up. And I've been doing this YouTube thing for well over 10 years now, and I'm not as young and as limber as I used to be. So filming has become a little bit more challenging just because it's not as easy to get into the layout as it used to be. So I have purposefully left kind of these open carpet areas right here, and you'll kind of see this one better, so that when it comes to filming episodes for you guys, I can get the best camera angles and the product doesn't suffer just because, let's say, I need to film somewhere in the middle of the layout and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do that, or something like that. So that is a feature of this new layout. You're probably thinking, well, you could have used that carpet over there for something really cool, and I could have, but I'm very happy with how this layout looks, and that extra space over there is well worth it to me. So again, we are still in the Thomas's branch line area of the layout, still looking pretty familiar. We have more farmland area over here with Toby. You could say that this is Toby's shed, but Toby's not here. Mavis is here right now. This is where we started the video. This is a brand new look for Maithwaite Station. I've had this smaller building for a long time, but it never really looked like a station. And for those who don't know, there was one set in the Talking Railway series era of Thomas Wooden Railway history where they did introduce this Maithwaite Station. It's the exact same building as the Great Waterton building, if you know what that is. And I think it looks great. And so while Maithwaite Station isn't a brand new area on a layout that I built, this Maithwaite Station definitely has a new look for sure. So I have Thomas right here with Sir Topham Hatt, and just kind of a nice area to get some water. And then there's also one of the many different roadway areas that we have on the layout. There is the iconic water mill, or the grist mill, from one of the opening scenes of the Thomas and Friends TV series. And this is also where Gordon's at. Gordon's pulling a lot of express coaches here over Bulgee's Bridge. And then we get into another major part of the layout, which is the diesel works. And because I've just talked about carpet and having open space, this layout is meant to be viewed from a couple of different angles. So as you can tell, I haven't built everything facing towards the camera. For example, I've purposely left stuff face, where I would be sitting if I was filming it. So that's another small thing I've done just to kind of make this layout a little bit different. But I have always wanted to pair the diesel works and the sheds back to back, because I believe it is a nice contrast there. So while the sheds is nice and big, the diesel works is big in and of itself, but maybe a little bit more run down. But like usual, we have sort of a meeting area here with all of the different diesels. I have a couple new destinations, or ones that haven't been seen in a while that I decided to throw in here. So it's always nice to have kind of a meeting area for the diesels. This destination right here, I think is called the Rumbling Bridge, and it's not the most impressive destination, but I did want to have two pieces of track kind of roll in this way to be able to face the diesel works. And with this overhead section that Gordon is on, it just kind of worked out that way. So it's not my favorite destination. It's actually, I think, a pretty weak destination that I unboxed a couple years ago, but it made an appearance on this layout somehow. And then, by the way, I should mention, we also got to bring back the Maithwaite Junction due to this kind of elevated crossing area. One other area I want to show off real quick, well, one character I should say, is Stephen. An area of the layout that is not making a return this time around is Ulfstead Castle, just because I've used it a couple of times. And it does take up a lot of real estate. So I wanted to just kind of turn that area into something different. So, Ulfstead Castle will be back, but it's not on this layout, unfortunately. And then there's also this Diesel Works Bridge. I may keep this, I may not. This is an area that could be turned into something else. So if this changes without notice, that's why I'm not really, I like that it's here because the Diesel Works is right there, but this could also change without warning. So just a heads up. Now let's move into the docks and the China Clay Works, a returning area that was missing on the last layout. So the docks here is nothing crazy, I will admit. I think we've kind of reached the pinnacle of what the docks should look like. It's going to look like something like this, honestly, with switches and sidings and a runoff area into the ocean. This is just what the docks should look like. In fact, it's almost in the exact same area as it was during the last layout. So nothing groundbreaking here, but I still really like how it looks, and I love Cranky here with Salty and Porter, and then you can kind of see there's a crossover switch underneath them right there, so that we kind of have an area where trains can roll in, and then they can also park their trucks or their rolling stock here if necessary. So nothing groundbreaking, but this is just kind of a tried and true method or a way of doing a docks area, and I think it works really well. The China Clay Works are directly behind the docks. This was an area, like I said, that was missing last time. So again, another T-switch. We have a couple of sidings right here for rolling stock. And then we start to go through the very convoluted path of getting to the China Clay Works. I think the Great Railway Show shunters missed the mark, and they got the memo that there was a meeting over there, but they took the wrong track, unfortunately. So we also have Fergus here, and then we kind of begin the long climb up to the top of the China Clay Works where Bill, Ben, and Timothy are. So very happy to have this piece back in the layout right here. You're going to see kind of the back side of the logging area with, the sawmill and dumping depot, and you're also going to see some areas that we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's kind of the first half of the layout right here. Obviously very standard gauge centric and heavy and focused. we'll just talk about this area right now. I'll kind of do it from an overhead perspective. But this is sort of the Henry's Forest area. It's got the sawmill and the dumping depot. That building is normally Marin Station, but it's the Soder Lumber Company this time around. And we also have that building, which I've used a couple different times. There's Sam with a large goods train on the viaduct. Wilbert and 16 are working at the sawmill. Flying Scotsman has some express coaches right there. That is going to lead into Henry's Tunnel and also a couple of different areas. We talked about Tidmouth already. That is Sir Topham Hatt's house, I should say that. A lot of different buildings and trees and stuff are probably going to move around throughout the season, but that one for sure is Sir Topham Hatt's house, and that is going to stay there. So let me show you guys another area. This is the Search and Rescue Center, and I will admit, I wish it looked a little bit better. This is one of the areas that if I had more time I would continue to tinker with, but I really liked the Search and Rescue Center on the last layout, and this one doesn't really reach that mark in my opinion, but it's still going to do the job if I'm being honest. So we have, your typical engines, Bell and Flynn. Dustin is there. And, we got like the searchlight, we got Captain's shed, so it's not like, we're missing anything, but I just wish it had turned out a little bit better. But Boko is on a line right here, and actually if you go to this siding right here, you kind of go through an abandoned pirate ship area and up and around, and this is actually where the magic buffers are. So there is Lady in the cast of the Thomas and the Magic Railroad right there. And then if I move just a little bit, you can kind of see where the magic buffers are right there. So Captain's Shed is in a little bit of kind of a cove area, or a little bit of a bay area. You have this track kind of sticking out, but he can still get to where he needs to go right here. And then he can also go up to the track and talk to everybody else if he needs to. So real quick, I guess we will just move over to Henry's Tunnel and Vickerstown Station. So I laid Vickerstown Station down first because I knew that's kind of where I wanted it to be. Nobody's at the station right now, but I laid it there. But then I was, looking at, Henry's Tunnel, and I'm like, well, I don't want to have it just, run into the station head on like I've done in the past. I kind of want to do something different. So I decided to put Henry's Tunnel at kind of this angle right here. Not really, pleased with how it turned out, I'll be honest, just because I wish it had turned out a little bit better. But it just kind of created for some awkward angles, and I wish, like I said, it had turned out a little bit better. But I wanted to put Henry's Tunnel on kind of a diagonal angle here just for something different. So we get what we get, and again, this would be an area I would change if I could do it all over again, but for the most part, everything does get to where it needs to go. It's just not in the most, I would say, glorious way possible. So that is the first, I'd say 75% of the layout. Obviously, very focused on the standard gauge engines. I'm going to move over into the narrow gauge part now. Very briefly, we have one more standard gauge section to talk about. So I wanted to put Vickerstown Sheds right up against Vickerstown Station. I mean, they got to be close to each other since they share the same name. So there's one track back there that runs through Normanby here to the turntable, and this is where the Vickerstown Sheds are. And then we kind of have this loop area. This right here is all standard gauge, and it leads into the wharf, which I'm very happy to show off. I feel like this is the first proper wharf I've done for Colin ever, and it's been a long time coming because I've had Colin for a very long time. But this area right here, as you can see where the ships are, this is meant to be kind of a bay area or like a lagoon where the ships can come up, and then I included this archstone tunnel or bridge here so that the ships can pass through, and all this is supposed to be open water right here. So that's how the ships are going to get there. So we have a standard gauge line that Molly is on, but it also is going to connect with the narrow gauge railway, of course. And then although the airport, serves Knapford, well, Vickerstown is still a really busy station, so that's where the airfield comes in. If there are people flying in, they want to do, go to one of the bigger stations on the island, they can head to the airfield instead. So you are looking at most of the narrow gauge railway right here. It actually takes up a fair amount of real estate space on this layout, and that wasn't really the intention, but that's just kind of what it blew up to. I actually have one more area to show you, the steamworks right here. So the steamworks is actually pretty big, and there's a lot of open space right here again. We have the two main steamworks buildings, And you know, we have a narrow gauge. This is actually a narrow gauge point right here, like I did last season. The narrow gauge line is defined by that clickety-clack track, and I actually ran out of clickety-clack track because it's so big. So you'll notice a few discrepancies here and there. But anyway, this is the Steamworks, and it's meant to be served by both the standard gauge and the narrow gauge engines. So that right there is the Abbey Repair Shop, a brand new destination. As you can see, that's how Victor is able to service the standard gauge engines like Hank and Murdoch. This line right here is is just a very long siding, and we come to this very unusual destination that was featured in one of the Sodor Story Collection things. But anyway, Ferdinand's on this like two-way turntable thing. It's like a turntable without the option to choose a different way. So he's on that, and the whole point of this siding right here is just to get looked at and examined, and you can get some water if necessary. And then if you want to stay the night or get any future repairs, that's where Bash and Dash are. We also have, this is where the Arsdale Railway comes into play. This is how the Arsdale engines are going to drop off their ballast, so they are able to access the standard gauge line next to Rebecca here on this elevated section as well. So now let's get to the meat and the potatoes of the narrow gauge layout. This is the Blue Mountain Quarry, and if I'm being honest, I think this looks pretty awesome. I'm very happy with how this turned out. I'm using this table, which I've used in the past, just because it allows for elevated, you know, what you would usually call playtime, but in this case, it'd be elevated stories for my Thomas Wooden Railway series. So the narrow gauge engines actually have a couple different ways of being serviced at the Steamworks. There's the Abbey Repair Shop, there's this building right here, and then if they need to be lifted up into the air for some reason, they have this other building right here. So that's always a possibility for them. So the Blue Mountain Quarry exists as such. You go down this line here, and there's a lot of nice theming with the blue rocks everywhere. I love how this turned out. But anyway, it's a nice slow climb up to the top of the Blue Mountain Quarry, where we have Merrick and Luke and Smudger and Sir Handles on his way. And I really like how this turned out. So this top area right here is not only the Blue Mountain Quarry, but then we also have the incline, which are two different areas on the Skarloey Railway. They just kind of serve or exist in the same area. So you can kind of see the people up top there and all the different packages and stuff. And I imagine this to be kind of an active work zone where they're going to need, you know, supplies, and they're going to need equipment. So that's why there's packages everywhere and everything, because I just think that's something that they would need. So anyway, I love how this turned out. I love how these two areas utilize this table. And then if you go over by Luke's line, you go down. After all that work, you head down. You go past Skarloey with some coaches. You go up and over this hill right here. And then you head into sort of the headquarters of the Skarloey Railway, this kind of meeting area and the sheds area, where we see Bertram, Mr. Percival, Duke, and Fearless Freddy. So instead of using a turntable this time, I wanted to use this 8-way switch, which is awesome. We have a couple different sidings and dead ends here. That's also how you get to the wharf over there. Like I mentioned, the sheds. And I really like how this turned out. I was skeptical while building it. I didn't think it looked very good while I was building it, but I think it looks pretty okay. And then we also have a road section that you saw over by the Steamworks. It also wraps around to the cement works here, which is where Patrick is at right now. So there's a little more of the Skarloey Railway to show you guys. I will admit, while I was building this, I was very tempted to, what I would say, nuke it and start over once in a while, because it was very frustrating and I was dealing with a limited amount of track. But anyway, we have a brand new station and a brand new destination for this part of the layout. This is the Hilltop Station, which is supposed to be used with a standard gauge engine because it's from like a Thomas and Bertie race set. But even the name and just the way this is laid out, it just reminds me of something you'd see on the narrow gauge railway. So that's what it's going to be used for. So this Hilltop Station, I think, is very appropriate for the narrow gauge engines. You also see Peter Sam with some coaches. Maybe that's a lemonade stand. Maybe that is the refreshment lady stand. Who knows? But then we also have a lot of road area over here for the road vehicles, and then kind of a hospital in the middle of nowhere, because I imagine this to be a very hilly and sometimes dangerous area, and you know, people may get hurt, engines may get hurt, so I think it's always good to have a hospital nearby. So I have one of my favorite parts of the layout to show you guys right now, because this is something that was very risky. I will admit I wasn't sure if it was going to work out or not, but I think you guys are going to like it. So very quickly, here is Great Waterton. I wasn't originally going to include Great Waterton because there wasn't any room for it kind of over there where the rest of the standard gauge engines are. But then I built this sheds area and the track looped around, and I was like, there's just this big open area behind the sheds here. And I thought, well, Great Waterton is kind of a dead end, so I threw some switches in and made it work. So there's Great Waterton with Stanley and Flora, and also Ivo Hugh. And then this is the Glen Knox switch tower, which I've used before. And we are going to roll into this. This is a one-way track. It dead ends at Boulder Mountain down the line. But then this right here is a waterfall destination from a set that I've reviewed before. And the bottom part of the line is meant for narrow gauge engines, as you see Rheneas right there. But then the top area, you're probably thinking, why do you have the Horde lorries going through a track section up here? Well, in my defense, if you look at this piece of track right here, I don't see any, rails or anything that would, denote to me, such as this, any sleepers or anything, that this is meant to be used by just engines. So using some creative liberties, I've decided to make this a road piece, and it's just kind of a big giant hill leading up to this logging area with the waterfall, and so that's why it connects to the Horde lorries over here. But now we get to one of my favorite parts. As you can see, the track kind of rises up where Rheneas is at. It goes under the road, and then we get into a very rocky part of the narrow gauge layout. We kind of move on to this stone area, which I've shown off in the past. But using this rock wall as a backdrop, I really believe this is one of the coolest parts of the layout that I've ever built. So we kind of have a little bit of a forest area where Proteus is at. We go through a tunnel right here, and then we kind of have this forest area, which explains all the twisting and turning we have to do because the narrow gauge railway is tight. There's not a lot of space to move around. This is the back side of the Hilltop Station. And then we move into Boulder Mountain, which, if I get to the right angle, I think you guys will see is a pretty cool area. So let's see, there we go. Especially with that rocky backdrop, I think it looks really, really cool. So this is a dead end area, which is serviced by this one-way piece of track right here. We got Mighty Mac, Butch, Rusty, Duncan, and Thumper. I think it looks really, really cool. This is one of my favorite parts. So again, something very unusual. Kind of had to build up to get onto this rock stone part right here, but I'm very happy with how this turned out. And it was one of those things where when I was building it, I was very unsure whether it was going to work out or not, or if people would like it, but I think people are going to like it. I think it is very unique, and especially since it plays into this part of the basement that you guys all know about. I think it was just time to do something like this, just because, well, I mean, why wouldn't you? The opportunity is there, and I started building it just to try it out, and it ended up working pretty well. So there is one more part of the layout I have to show you guys, and that is for the return of the, you guessed it, Arsdale Railway. They were absent last time, but they are back. So they're actually going to reside kind of right down at the bottom here. There is a meeting area right here with a turntable. Originally there was no turntable here, but I figured it's the least I could do to kind of give them just an area where they can sit and talk. So this is a lot of space, I think, for just 5 engines, but we have Mike around the turntable, Rex pulling some coaches, the Haunted Mine, a couple of barrel loaders like usual. We got Bert up here with some more coaches as he goes over the track. We have the clock tower, which was featured very prominently in an episode, I think in season 15. So there is that. We also have the dynamite stand, which I think has been converted to fireworks at this point. But then we have the transfer table, which I wanted to include somehow. And so this is how the Arsdale engines are going to be able to drop their ballast off for the standard gauge engines, is that line right there. So it's not a huge area, but I'm very happy that they are back on this layout and that they can be included in some episodes. So I forgot, there is one more area I need to show you guys. And I don't know, we'll see what you guys think about it. But this right here where Bear is at, this actually isn't just a long siding. It is an access point to kind of this abandoned mine area. And I did something like this last season. I had the diesel works here, and so this includes this main mine building, and then like the Morgan's mine, and then this is the Echo tunnel right here, and it just ends and buffers back there. But the setting and the close space and just the lack of light kind of creates a dark, maybe dangerous or sinister feel. So I'm not really sure what this is going to be used for, but I did want to show it to you guys because it's part of the layout. So anyway, I believe I have shown you guys everything for this Thomas Wooden Railway layout. There are some parts that I really like. For example, I'm a big fan of the Tidmouth Sheds turntable area, and I especially love the narrow gauge layout in and of itself, but especially, you know, the Boulder Mountain area and then the track leading to it. And then there are also some areas where, you know, I think some work could be done. For example, this area right here, I think it's just kind of a bunch of tracks going nowhere. There's really nothing really memorable about this area. I wish I could do more work on the search and rescue center as well. But for the most part, I am very satisfied with this layout. For example, like I said, you know, the narrow gauge part turned out really well, I think. So overall, I am pretty satisfied with this layout. You know, I think all my layouts have hits and misses. This one maybe has more misses than hits in terms of memorable locations, but I hope you guys enjoy it, and I can say this with confidence at least, that there are a lot of great storytelling points and locations on this layout, which really this is what this is for. You know, I built this layout to film on, not just as a layout to be viewed statically like I am showing you right here, but this layout has a purpose, and I do want to let you guys know that I have some great ideas and some great plot points in mind thanks to this layout. So if that's any consolation, I hope you guys will stick around for Season 17, because I do believe there is going to be a lot that is going to happen on this layout, and I'm not totally ruling out the idea that this layout could be used for multiple seasons either. We'll just have to wait and see, and we'll take Season 17 one episode at a time. And just so you guys are aware, Season 17 will be starting very soon. It's kind of a unique season because for just the third time only, I am using user-suggested titles for my series. I usually don't do that. I'm usually the one who supplies the titles and the plots. But I did a contest on YouTube over a year and a half ago, and I'm just getting around to finalizing the titles and everything. So at least 10 out of the 15 episodes for next season, or for this coming season, are going to be ones that were submitted by users, and they've already been chosen. So, you know, there's no need to throw down any titles in the comments or anything. But I'm very excited for that. The titles that I chose are very creative, and they're going to be very challenging to think of plots for, but I'm looking forward to that. And so, yeah, this has been a brand new Thomas Wooden Railway layout for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. Of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments below. Let me know what you think. And like I said, Season 17 will be starting very soon, hopefully next week. So, anyway, I want to thank you all so much for watching. It has been a great pleasure, as always, to build a layout for you guys. And getting started on the next season of my series is going to be tough work, but I'm looking forward to it. So everybody, I want to thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed the layout, and be sure to stay tuned for Season 17 of my series starting next week.